Hello everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our MSc Real Estate webinar. My name is Craig Donaldson and I am the course advisor for this course, and hopefully by now those of you that are attending have had some communication with me. I'd just like to give you a quick overview of how the webinar will go. My colleague Mark Shepherd will run through the presentation shortly. As you're listening to Mark and a question pops into your head, please do feel free to send it through to Mark and I. We do have access to capture the questions here. Once Mark has finished with the presentation, we'll happily answer any questions that we do receive. And so with that, let me hand you over to Mark. Sorry, Mark, just trying to minimize our view. There we go.
Right, hello everybody. Welcome to our webinar about the MSc in Real Estate by Blended Learning. As you can see, I'm the course leader, Mark Shepherd. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I've come into academia from practice, so I have a mixture of academic and practical background. So I hope that you will see that we bring a practical as well as an academic aspect to the course, and that's certainly been my aim in developing the program in this format. I've been involved with a number of academic institutions in various ways over the years, and I'm really pleased now to be here at the University of Manchester working on our MSc Real Estate Distance and Blended Learning. So let me take you through the course by introducing you first to the other members of staff. So we have a good sized real estate team here at Manchester, and you can see some of them at last year's graduation ceremony in the photograph. So the team includes my colleague Selma Carson, who particularly specializes in asset management, Dr. Satirius Thanos, who is a real estate modeler, Sherry Zhu, who is responsible for investment and finance, together with our new professor Anupam Nanda. Eero Valtonen focuses on development, and Richard Kingston focuses on planning. Now, they might all sound like different subjects, but we do very much see this as a joined up, integrated, synergistic program. I thought it might be helpful just to introduce the real estate industry and just to emphasize how substantial it is. So as you can see from our slides, the total value of commercial real estate as at 2017, $33.3 trillion. And you can see how some of the biggest players are represented here on the screen. Real estate is an incredibly important part of the world economy, but perhaps the size of it isn't as obvious from this slide as it might be from the next one. Here we're looking at different types of investment. So we've got financial instruments, we've got oil reserves, we've got global gross domestic product, and yet the largest by value element is real estate. Now you can see that the residential element is dominant, then we have commercial and agricultural on top, but real estate asset value dominates all other sectors in total. So it is an incredibly important global financial instrument. I often get asked what we mean by real estate because different people have different interpretations of what that term really represents. For me, it represents four interrelated areas. The first area, actually my main area of interest, is appraisal and valuation. That is putting an economic value on real estate for all sorts of different purposes. But it's also about measuring performance and looking at other types of value, not just economic value. That's tied into investment and finance, how we fund real estate, where we invest our money, what kind of options there are available in the real estate industry, directly buying property, indirectly buying shares or units in different types of investment vehicles, all of which are underpinned by real estate assets. We tie that into asset management, which might sound like the same thing, but it really divides into two things. Asset management is really about what you do with property once you own it. So on the one hand, it's from the landlord's point of view. You know, you own a property, how do you maximize its investment return? How do you maximize the value of that asset? But also, if you're an occupier, it's about looking at it from the corporate perspective. How do you ensure that your real estate assets contribute to your main business activity, which may not be real estate at all? And I think those two go together, because obviously the owner is very much interested in providing a real estate asset that meets the needs of their client market. And so understanding both sides of that equation are important. And obviously we have to think about the supply side of the real estate industry, planning and development. The idea that, you know, where does real estate come from? When do you develop? Why do you develop? How do you develop? So we'll cover those sorts of things in planning and development. So those four pillars, if you like, make up our interpretation of what we mean by real estate. So what's special about our course in Manchester? Apart from the fact, obviously, that it's brilliant, but I would say that, wouldn't I? I guess one of the things we really try and do is combine academic excellence with developing transferable skills, things that you can really use in practice. So it's a proper combination of academic knowledge and professional skills, and trying to bring those two together. Now, it is what we call an intensive fast track conversion course. So it is compressed into a relatively short period of 2 years as the minimum time to complete the program. But in so doing, you also satisfy the professional entry requirements, the academic requirements of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, so that potentially, if you get appropriate experience during or after the program, this will lead you to a professional qualification as a chartered surveyor, as well as the academic qualification of a master's from, you know, a high quality university. You know, Manchester University is part of the Russell Group, the group of research intensive universities, and it has a very good reputation for both teaching and research, as I shall illustrate. So we try to design the program with 4 key themes running all the way through. The first, which links back to what I was talking about earlier, is commercial awareness, is being able to link your knowledge to what's really going on in the market, and to knowledge and skills that you can put into practice almost straight away. We also recognize that real estate is a global business. So whilst we are based in the UK, we're very conscious that we need to take a much more holistic perspective. And so we don't rely entirely on UK-based examples or references purely to the UK market. And certainly having an international team of real estate experts helps to make our curriculum and our delivery globally focused. As you know, sustainability is a high silhouette topic at the moment, and it's very much a core thread through lots of aspects of the program. So we haven't separated out sustainability and tried to turn it into a unit, although we did consider it. We decided that it needed to be an essential thread through everything that we do. So you will see it popping up at various points during the course of your study. And that kind of underlines the last point, the synergies and connections between different units. The idea that this is not just a series of things that you study one after another, but they are linked together. You'll find in some of the units, we refer back to other units and say, yes, you studied this in a preceding unit, but let's look at it from this perspective, because this is what we're going to focus on in the current unit. So there are links between them, and there is a natural progression. So what type of graduates do we produce? Well, I guess this slide sums it up. Excuse me while I find my points in my notes. Well, my slides are slightly obscured on my screen, so I'm relying on my notes. So the point is that it's not just about understanding how real estate works and the mechanics, but it's about the role of real estate and the influence on different stakeholders. So as I've suggested here, society, business, and the end user. We try and incorporate all of these in our analysis of real estate. And it's also about understanding the long-term nature of real estate, that whilst it is possible to flip property, turn it around in a short space of time and make a short-term profit, a lot of the sorts of transactions and interactions that we're going to be involved with in the real estate market are going to be for the long term. And so we have to take that long-term perspective. We have to understand how to link, for example, our real estate assets to liabilities. So for example, pension funds and insurance companies invest in real estate because they have long-term liabilities and they want to match it by long-term assets. Okay, so I'd like to introduce you to Elizabeth, who's currently on the blended learning real estate program. She works for a large UK-based real estate investment trust. And as you can see, there are three key things that attracted her to the program. First one is that it's taught primarily online. Secondly, that it gives her a really strong stepping stone in her career, which is ultimately to become a chartered surveyor in her case. So the Ics accreditation is fundamental to that. So she chose this program to support her career aspirations, but also that it fits around the things that she could, the other things she has going on in her life. It fits around her career. Jeff Hardman, who works for a large asset manager, actually here in the Northwest. They're one of the biggest asset managers here in the Northwest of England. I think for her, the key skills, the transferable skills that she was able to gain during her time studying real estate here at Manchester has helped her in her career. So it's not just the knowledge, but it's the ability to apply that knowledge, to know where to get information from, how to interpret and present that information in all sorts of professional contexts. So I would say that's her. I think the thing that she highlights, and certainly we do try and make things as realistic as we can. Obviously, it's an academic environment, but a lot of the assignments that you will undertake have a practical aspect or are very much based on things that we've encountered in practice previously. So I often get asked about our Ics accreditation, so I think it's probably helpful just to talk about that here. So one of the things to understand is the Ics accredited institutions, and the University of Manchester is one of those. It is what's known as an accredited university partner. Now, we added the blended learning program to our portfolio, and it was accredited by the RICS back in November 18. So it's been accredited for some time. But as you'll see shortly, we have actually been running real estate programs for much longer. So the blended learning program is new to our, or relatively new to our stable, but we have been running real estate programs for a good number of years. So I often get asked, okay, I understand the academic qualification, I understand I need to get an MSc, but how does that translate into the professional RICS qualification? Well, there are 3 stages to qualifying to become a chartered surveyor. That is a professional member of the RICS. First of all, you complete an RICS accredited degree, which obviously this course is. Secondly, you complete at least 24 months of what's described as structured training. Essentially, this is supervised on-the-job experience. Now, the interesting thing about that is because you're studying part-time, if you're working in relevant employment, you can be gathering that experience at the same time as studying for the program. The only proviso is you cannot sit the final assessment, which is the bit at the bottom, until you've successfully completed the MSc. So the final assessment is essentially to establish whether you're fit to practice independently, and it involves 4 elements: a summary of your experience, categorized into different competencies, in other words, different key areas of expertise. You have to provide information on a case study, a specific aspect of your work that you examine in detail. You need to demonstrate that you have kept up to date by presenting a continuing professional development record, and you have an interview which lasts typically 60 minutes, where you are examined on all the things in your summary of experience, your case study, and your CPD record. One of the good things is that Selma and I are both on these panels for the final assessment, that we are heavily involved with the RICS. I'm a panel member. Selma is actually chair of one of the panels. And so it's not just about the academic aspects, but we are in touch with your professional requirements as well, should you choose to progress to that once you graduate. So we've been running real estate programs here since 2013. On campus, we have 2 pathways. We have real estate asset management and real estate development. So our blended learning program is, if you like, a combination of both of those aspects. And we've been successfully recruiting since 2013. Our typical student numbers are around 70, which is quite good. But this year, we actually took in over 110 students, and it's looking like applications have increased even more this year. But that's for the campus program. Obviously, we're talking about the blended learning. I just want to reassure you that we do have a strong, well-established, well-regarded real estate program portfolio here at Manchester. So, how does the study work? Well, there are 6 core units to the program. That is 6 units that you must study. Then you also have 1 optional unit where you get a choice from 3, and I'll explain these shortly. And there's a 40 credit project, a practice-based project. So we don't have a traditional dissertation, we have a practice-based project, or something based on the real estate market. Now, the minimum time to complete the program is 24 months. You can take longer under some circumstances, but the minimum is 24. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how they fit together. Now, I should probably make one thing clear. The layout I'm going to show you works if you're joining the program in February. If you join the program in September, the order is slightly different. So before I go into the detail, perhaps I should just explain that. The first units you study and the last units you study will always be the same. But the middle of the program, you will study units in a different order depending on when you join the program. So I'll try and explain that here. So, real estate markets. This is an introduction to real estate context, its investment context, and how real estate markets operate. It's very much an overview of international real estate, its relevance, its importance, and it gives context really to everything else that you're going to study. The other unit you study in your first block, when you first join us, is property valuation. That is essentially about putting an economic value on real estate assets in different circumstances. That's my unit, so I could talk about it all day, but Craig will start nudging me. So it's all about understanding when properties have value, and the different contexts in which that value might change. Linked to the online delivery, which is a big part of these programs, we have conferences. So as you can see, I've got conference 1 here, overarching real estate markets and property valuation. That's because one of the things we have in the program, which I'll come back to, is we have a conference twice a year, which is where you come into the centre for 3 days, engage with academic staff, undertake all sorts of visits, activities, see professional speakers, networking, all sorts of things that I'm going to talk about later, connected with each pair of units. So there'll be a conference related to each pair of units. So the second pair of units that you will study are real estate investment and finance, which is probably fairly self-explanatory, looking at real estate in an investment context. So both direct investment in real estate by buying individual properties, and indirect investment through real estate investment trust, property companies, and so on. You'll also study strategic asset management. Now that's really about what to do with the property once you've bought it. So you're investing in a real estate asset. How do you maximize the value to you as an investor? See, mostly for investment properties, you have an owner who wants to realize the investment potential of that asset and an occupier who is using it for the purpose of the business. And generally they're separate entities. So it's how can the landlord make the right choices to maximize the income, the return on their real estate investments. So that is, if you like, year 1. Year 2 starts off in a similar way. So we have 2 more units, but here we're looking at the supply side. So future cities is a mixture of planning, planning systems, and key drivers of future cities. So it's not just about what's happening now and different systems around the world, but what are going to be the big influences of city development in the future. And we've combined this, which is with what I think is a very practical land and development unit, which is all about the development process. So it's essentially takes you through developing real estate from inception, the first ideas, right through to final construction and disposal. So how does that development process work, and what's the role of the real estate professional across that discipline? So the key thing about future cities and land and development is that depending on when you join the program, it will either be your 2nd or 3rd collection of units, and will alternate with real estate investment and finance and strategic asset management. So you'll all study the same thing, but the middle units will not necessarily come to you in the same order. The final units are the optional unit, where you get a choice of real estate law, real estate modeling, and corporate real estate. I won't go into these in detail, but real estate law, I should say, is quite UK-centric, but is intentionally that way because it's one of the things that we find helps the employability of our students who are looking particularly to work in the UK. Real estate modeling, which is very much about financial modeling and understanding and modeling markets. So financial analysis is a very quantitative model, which we found is particularly appealing to our international students. And then we've got the corporate real estate project, which is essentially a practical unit looking at real estate from the corporate occupier's point of view. It's the idea that, if you're occupying real estate, how do you maximize value? Running alongside this, and then coming in towards the end of that time, so you'll study your option in the first half of that block of study, and we'll start introducing your project. We'll start getting you to think about ideas and coming up with a plan, so that in the final element, of your study, you'll actually be writing your project. So although it is 40 credits in total, what essentially will happen is you'll pick up the equivalent of 10 credits early in the cycle and then go full time and pick up the other 30 credits in the second half of that block. So again, that will be supported by a conference. So in each of these cases, there'll be conferences allied to the subjects, but the conference 4 related to the option and the project-based inquiry will help you understand which are the best options to choose and highlight some key elements of those options, but will also help you get into the research mode, if you like. Okay. So why are we calling it blended learning and not just distance learning? Well, the principal reason is because it combines both online elements with face-to-face teaching. So the conferences, those 3 days, are designed to complement and support the online learning that you do whilst you're studying the units. Now, the conferences I'll come back to, but to talk about the online material first, it's structured on a week-by-week basis. So there's a clear structure for what to follow, how to follow it, but it's designed in such a way that if you find you're particularly busy with other things some weeks and less busy at others, you can engage with it in a slightly more flexible way. So you can learn at your own pace, although the assignment deadlines are fixed, the way you engage with the material is not. And obviously the point of the conference is to get you to meet with your fellow students, your tutors, to network with professionals. So the taught units, that is the 7 units that you study, are all 20 credits, and they equate to approximately 200 hours of study over a 10-week period. Now, the way that the online material is structured is you have 8 weeks of taught material and then 2 weeks to work on the final assessment, which is usually at least 50% of your final grade for that unit. The project-based inquiry is like a double unit, so it's 40 credits and equates to about 400 hours of study. So essentially, as you go through, each block is 40 credits. You study 2 units, except for the last one where you're studying an option and the project-based inquiry, and that's slightly more intense. Typical questions I get asked about coursework, or at least assessment. First of all, it is 100% coursework. There are no formal examinations, and they can all be done online. So you don't have to come to an examination center or anything like that. So there are no written examinations at all. The closest we come is that in 1 or 2 units, there are some online tests. But where there's an online test, it only makes up a relatively small amount of the total assessment on the unit. Otherwise, we've got a combination of different assessments depending on what seems most appropriate for that unit. So it might be an essay, a report, a blog post, a wiki. And for most units, I think all but one, there are typically 2 assessments. I say all but one. My unit evaluation actually has 3. It has 2 small ones and a larger one. Maybe that's just me being awkward. The project is a practice-based or market-based research project based on 10,000 words. So the idea is you get to plan, manage and conduct your own piece of practice-based research in anything that you wish related to real estate. So the advantage of that is you have control over that. It could be something that you think might help your career, something that you think might just be interesting, something that you might wish to research further in the future. And you'll get face-to-face support, typically in group tutorials, and you'll have a supervisor allocated to you who will support you through that process. I'm probably taking too long over this, so I'll speed up a little bit. So I have talked a lot about conferences, so just to remind you, there are 2 conferences a year, so 4 in total during your period of study, and each conference is linked to a pair of units, as you can see below. Typically, they run a few weeks into the first of the pair of units, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Partly, it's about introducing you to the 2 units. Secondly, it's about getting you to work together and think collaboratively. But also, it's at a point where you will have received the feedback on the preceding 2 units, so we'll be able to give you some academic support as well as professional and tutoring. So it's not just about networking and learning new things, but it's also an opportunity to reflect on how your studies have gone so far, and what things you could do to improve and enhance your performance. So I just want to finish off with a few things about the program. And the first one is, what is it that makes this course different? Well, I think it's partly that it's designed for a global market. I think also we combine the ability, we hope, to think strategically with strong technical knowledge about different aspects of real estate. It's designed for people who don't have an existing qualification in real estate, so it's a conversion program for that reason. So you'll study a number of different aspects of real estate in quite a lot of depth, but over a relatively condensed period of time. I'm not sure whether I should say this, but generally speaking, students on conversion courses find it's not the academic level of the work that's challenging, it's just making sure that they pace themselves to ensure that they have enough time to get through the amount of material that there is. We try and give you core knowledge and skills that you can apply to your workplace if you're already working in the real estate field. Obviously, we're accredited by the RICS, which is one of the world's leading real estate professional bodies. Blended learning, we think, adds something significant to your ability to study. Now, whilst the conferences are not compulsory, they are strongly encouraged. After all, we wouldn't have put them in if we didn't think they added to your learning experience, and we try and make them properly meaningful. So you'll have professionals at the cutting edge of real estate coming in and presenting to you. You'll get to see real estate projects in context. You'll get to apply your skills to a number of different environments, and you'll get to network not just with each other and the tutors, but the professionals from practice. We use real life scenarios and case studies wherever we can to try and make the material as real as we can. And I think we help you develop what I've described as career critical transferable skills. So it's not just about the knowledge, it's not just about being able to do real estate, but it's about knowing how to apply those skills perhaps in contexts that you haven't encountered before, or we haven't specifically covered on the course. After all, real estate is a very diverse industry. So why choose us? Well, let me tell you a number of things about Manchester. As you can see here, so it's ranked 38th in the world, 8th in Europe, and 6th in the UK in the 2017 academic ranking of world universities, as you can see. We're also University of the Year for 2019 for graduate employment by the Times and Sunday Times Good University Guide. And 83% of our university's research was ranked world leading. That doesn't mean that we don't take our teaching very seriously, but it does mean that our teaching is underpinned by strong, real world, cutting edge research. And as a department, because all the staff are hosted within the Department of Planning and Environmental Management, we were ranked 5th in the UK for planning by the Complete University Guide in 2019. So you're coming to a good school. That's basically what I'm saying there. Okay, we're nearly there. So a couple of practicalities. joining the program. We have 2 intakes a year, one in February and the other in September. Now, because of the inflational increase, you'll see a slight difference. So the February fees are £15,000. The September fees for the program are 15.5. There's a slight difference there. The entry requirements are normally a minimum of a 2-1 honours degree or international equivalent. There's not a requirement for relevant work experience, but if you don't quite meet the academic requirements, don't despair. It is possible that with the right type and level of work experience within real estate at the right level, that could be an alternative means of entry. So if we have candidates who do have relevant work experience who don't quite meet the academic requirements, then those applications come to me for review. So although I've put those two together, the first one is, if you like, the automatic qualification criteria. The second one is a possible backup if you don't quite achieve that level. Either way, though, you will, if English is not your first language, you will need to have an IELTS score of 6.5 or equivalent. Okay, I think you probably heard enough from me. So I know we've had a few questions. So
we did have a number of questions sent to us before today's presentation. So while I'm searching the questions that have been sent to us beforehand, let me pitch one to you.
Okay.
What could be the maximum length of time I could take to complete the course if my situation changed?
That's a good question. I think the maximum, I'd have to check this actually, but I think the maximum time is something like 5 years. Yeah. I will double check, but I'm pretty sure it's 5 years. So you could study at a much slower pace if your circumstances change. That's certainly the way that the program is designed.
Another question we have, if I do join the course, can we speak to alumni or existing cohorts to share thoughts and get some ideas?
Absolutely, it's something that we strongly encourage. One of the things about the conferences is, although the conferences are focused on a particular pair of modules or units, there will be several streams running at the same time, so it'll be like a proper conference. So you will be coming in for a conference with at least some other students who were on the program at the same time as you, some of whom will be further ahead, some of you will be behind, and we certainly encourage our alumni to join us for the conferences as well if they're able, because they're often out there doing exactly the things that we want them to share with you about the real estate industry.
One final question I've received is,
sure.
Through this course, will it help my employment chances and will I have chance to network?
Double yes, I guess. We certainly embed employability into the program. Again, the conferences are a chance to network with other professionals from around the world, not just your fellow students, but people from practice. And you know, a good master's qualification from Manchester, potentially coupled with moving towards an Ics accreditation, is a very marketable commodity. We've had another question about if you're already doing the RICS. Okay, that's a tricky question to answer because it depends on the individual circumstances. I think our argument would be, if you're not very experienced in the real estate field, or you want a broader perspective on real estate, looking at both development and management, appraisal and investment, then this helps to make you a more rounded professional. It won't necessarily speed things up. It depends which route you're taking. So if you're taking the experienced professional route, that's a slightly different one. So I'm happy if you want to email Craig or myself, we're happy to answer that question based on your specific circumstances. So sorry, that was a slightly long-winded question to say it depends. Yes.
If we have any more questions, I think that appears to be that for now.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for your attention. And if you have any questions at all, we'll be delighted to answer them by email.
And I'd just like to add from what Mark said, is as we are approaching the closing date for the February intake, which is the 1st of February. So following on from what Mark said, if you have any questions that you would like answering, please do let us know. The slides will be sent out within the next 24 hours, which will contain the email address to reach us at. So please do email us if you have any questions about your application form. Thanks very much, Mark. We hope you enjoyed the presentation, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Bye-bye.